And not everybody's convinced by a master plan. Everybody said, well, that's pie in the sky. That's, come on, it's never going to happen. You're never going to do that. And it was only, I guess, when we began at the project scale saying, all right, we got to do a test case. And it's got to be good. You know, it's got to demonstrate to people that this is worth going through. And that's what Derby Square became, was a sort of a test case of how the master plan might eventually be implemented, and what its character would be like, why it would be different from what had been there, and what people thought was, well, it's always been that way, hasn't it? It's always been asphalt and cars parked, and you just walk through the cars if you want to go into the town hall to pay your water bill or whatever you do. I mean, I don't know if anybody ever had looked at the town hall before, you know, in the last 100 or 50 years. It was all surrounded automobiles. Whether it was a beautiful building, you probably wouldn't have known it, you know. So the idea was to frame this thing in a way that it became sort of the centerpiece of the project and of that particular public environment. So we're trying to think of things, how to energize an urban space and make it both attractive all the time, but usable on selective occasions. And that was the generation of the kind of stepped configuration where it becomes sort of an amphitheater, quasi-amphitheater, that could be used that way, but didn't look like an amphitheater when it was empty. You know, it just looked like an interesting forecourt to a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful building. It was controversial. I mean, we removed a lot of parking, had to, you know, parking along the streets and other places, and just said you're going to have to do with a little less now. So it took some convincing, but I think the physical realization of the project was pretty convincing to people to say, wow, a pedestrian environment is kind of exciting, you know, and these are beautiful materials, and it is great to have some shade in here. You know, there's these trees that go down, and there's lighting. You know, you can go out here at night. And I think the bollard lights were an alternative to that, to say, look, we don't need to have lights everywhere like this. Sometimes it'd be great just to get the light on the pavement. You can splash it out. I can still, there's enough ambient light from the shops. I can see people. In that case, it created a physical barrier between what was still an open drive. I mean, you could take service vehicles and fire engines down that central walk, but the pedestrian could step behind the bollard line and be in a zone where you couldn't get a vehicle. You know, so you've had some, there were no curbs anymore. So we took the curbs out of that environment and said, well, we'll do it in other physical devices. We'll create the kind of security you get out of a curb with something else. I don't think initially, like Derby Square, was thought of so much as a budget issue as this has got to be damn good and much better than what was there, in order to say, wow, if we could do this to our public environment in other parts of the downtown area, that might eventually make an impact. That might begin to attract people to the city.